The branding study is for our entire city, and that is phase one. So I'm going to go through our findings from our public input sessions and our surveys, and I guess you can maybe stop me if you have any questions. So the first slide here just goes over who is on our steering committee. We have many members from our community. We tried to be diverse, but yet strategic. They are a subcommittee under our Downtown Development Authority. So we have various people like our chamber president. We have some representation from BASE, which we thought was extremely important if we're trying to brand our city and find out what we're missing and what we need for the future. And various other members from other boards and just business owners in Midtown. So we will go over some of our public input results, some research findings, and what to expect next. So like I said, this is phase one. It is a three-part phase. We started this in February of 2025, although we brought this to our previous council probably a year and a half ago to 2 years ago. So we were on the waiting list for quite a while. These are the main questions that were covered in our public input sessions and our survey. And just by a show of hands, who in the audience attended any of our public input sessions or filled out a survey? We really appreciate you. So some of the common themes were, I'm going to have to get close to my screen so I can read, that people were really attracted to St. Mary's because of its natural beauty and coastal character. The steering committee mentioned numerous times about our marsh sunsets, outdoor recreation, and being grounded in our coastal identity. Some of the other sessions emphasized our natural beauty, the access to the waterfront, our marshes and wildlife, and the overarching theme was our proximity to Cumberland Island as one of the top reasons why people love St. Mary's. It was also mentioned our small town atmosphere and the peaceful pace. So the steering committee overwhelmingly praised our peaceful pace of life, the welcoming community, and our small town feel, which is what you think of when you think of St. Mary's. Some other things that were repeatedly referenced was how peaceful we were. Multiple people referred to our community as very Hallmark movie-like, a little Mayberry, if you will. And then, again, the slower pace, but the strong connection and the overwhelming pride and well-being for our community. Walkability and desired for improved infrastructure was a common theme. The steering committee cited some needed improvements for sidewalks, some hopeful trail connections in the future, and bike infrastructure. Let's see. None of that's really relevant. So then we also referenced that our need for things to engage our youth and military families. Although they do have that on base, we would love to bridge that gap into our community. So, and then one of the other themes was the deep sense of community and local pride. So St. Mary's is often described as authentic, safe and grounded. Lots of people referenced our shrimping connection and that as our history. The Milltown was an overarching theme. Our surveys and focus group participants referenced our friendly neighborhoods, our safety, community pride, strong military and historical roots. So that's what you think of when I think of St. Mary's anyway. And then another large concern was our concern for growth and planning and how we're going to maintain that for our future. So our steering committee also referenced the need for thoughtful planning as our city grows because growth is inevitable. And then other sessions echoed the broader concerns of blight, overdevelopment, and the desire to preserve our character while also improving our amenities. So in our focus groups, we heard from over 100 individuals. So these were our in-person groups. Those were people from our steering committee, which I referenced in the first slide, people from the Navy, other city and government officials, students, business owners, property owners, nonprofits, and new and long-term residents. So we heard from a lot of different people in our survey, but the overarching percentage was white females, and that's generally normal. That's when you do survey results, that's generally who you hear from the most. We were really excited about the 34% of military affiliated responses because we worked super hard to get those into their hands. So we also really tried to hit our youth. That's something that we'll try to do better at in the future. But one of the things that our Carl Vinson group told me was that we have a 95.3% satisfaction rate with our survey and focus groups, and that's the highest that they've ever encountered with any of the groups that they've worked with, and they've worked with multiple cities across the state of Georgia. So that's very, very hopeful. And one of the things that came up often in our focus groups when we talked about taglines and branding and what do you think of when you think of St. Mary's was people kept referencing that it was a slice of paradise, so we thought this picture was very fitting. So people who love this place, they gave us multiple reasons why, but there's a few on the screen. And some other things that came out was St. Mary's keeps me grounded. Please don't make me cross the bridge. People reference that a lot about going to Kingsland. This place is grounding. Live while you have life. So that's one of the things that people mentioned a lot. And that the whole shrimping industry captures the essence of who we were and who we are. And one of the things that stuck out with our big city group was that I made more friends when I moved here than I did in the 40 years where I used to live. So that's very sweet. I think that definitely is a great depiction of St. Mary's. And then they also polled people on where did they live before they came here. And these were the two largest demographics of where people came from, Florida and South Carolina. So, I think that people may think that that's opposite, but our results say that most of the people came from Florida and South Carolina. An interesting fact is that another large demographic was from California, so that was pretty interesting to me. So we asked people who grew up in St. Mary's, what did they love about it and why did they stay? And it was really just, we heard this is home, home, home. It's not too far from the large cities, but it's still quiet, close enough to, go if you need to or want to. They really, really loved our historic presence and our historic charm. And then we asked, if you didn't grow up here, why are you here or why did you choose to stay? And the affordability and cost of housing was a really big percentage. And interestingly enough, everybody was really excited about our recreational activities, but they refer to that in what we have access to through the water. Things that a lot of people don't always count in recreation, which are outside activities like our trails, the waterway, fishing, kayaking, and things like that. So then we have, if you moved here, what do you love about St. Mary's? And they said that they loved that it felt quiet, safe, friendly, a little slower pace. They really liked our natural beauty. Although it is very hot right now, they did love our warm weather and mild winters. And one of our hidden gems is definitely our rookery, and we had a ton of people comment on that in our surveys and our focus groups. I learned a lot about our large birding community during those sessions. So, let's see. All right. So, just as there are things that they love, there are things that people wish they could change. The number one thing is that people want more restaurants. So if you know any entrepreneurs that want to open a restaurant, please send them my way. So, and then they said that our limited walkability, I think that's in the eye of the beholder, bike infrastructure, lack of activities and amenities for people under 30, because we do have a very large population that is in their mid-30s and under. And then we had an overarching theme of our local government issues, people's perception of our taxes, the maintenance, and just normal, they put tire fire, but just really normal day-to-day, what we would call dumpster fire situations we have to put out. So that sort of thing. And then blight, dilapidated buildings, and vacant buildings in our midtown area.
Candace?
Yes, sir.
Did they give any specifics about the activities or amenities that were missing?
Yes. Bowling, more emphasis on our recreational sports. People kept saying soccer, basketball. We have a large gymnastics community. The ability to host things like that and welcome those people into our community from around our community. So that sort of thing. So St. Mary's uniqueness. 75% are not from here. A lot of that, I'm sure, contributes to our naval base, which we are so thankful for. And then that we don't have a beach. We're a coastal community with no access to the water unless you own a boat, is some of the things that were said. One of our uniquenesses is Cumberland Island, and we're so thankful for that. We're very undiscovered in a sense. People stumble upon us. That's part of our charm. That's a lot of what people loved about us. Nature. We're more affordable than our competition, if you will. And that we are on the cusp of huge growth. So, and they did reference Pigmental Studios and the amount of housing that we have going up in our community. And they really loved our cool, coastal, laid-back, small-town vibe. And they want to protect that cool, coastal, laid-back, small-town vibe. So if you did the survey, one of the questions was, if St. Mary's were a person, how would you describe them, or something like that. And the larger the word on this screen, the more it showed up on the survey. So, all in all, she's a pretty good person. Not only did we gather this information and input from surveys and public input sessions, but we also used Esri. I'm sure Jamie could probably explain it a little bit more, but it's something that, large developers and contractors they use it to see what our community is when they're thinking of moving there. And again, we're very unique because usually a community has one, maybe two to identify them, but we had three. So, and these are our three that Esri said identified us from the data that they pull. And then the competition. So we have to, when we talk about branding, we have to know who are we branding with, against, alongside. So we have to think about the communities that surround us. And Competitor community research is a critical part of place branding, and one of the things that I want to make sure that everybody knows is that what we did gather from this is that we're not really trying to do place making in St. Mary's. We're trying to do place keeping, because everybody really loves a lot of what we are and who we are. So although there will be small pieces in the RSVP part where we add things to enhance us, they really, really do love what makes us special, our small town, charming, historic vibe. So another thing that makes us very unique is that not only do we compete with our neighboring cities, but we compete with neighboring states. So we compete with Georgia, we compete with Florida, and we compete with South Carolina when you think about our competition. So just here's a little who our top competitors are when we're trying to vie for residents and people to choose this as their home. Retirees, remote workers, young families. So Fernandina Beach is obviously an obvious, but more developed but similar in historic feel and waterfront living. We have Brunswick. So we kind of position ourselves as the quieter alternative to Brunswick, which is nice. And then Beaufort, South Carolina could appeal for the same creative retiree community, but with less tourism pressure. So that's us. And then Port Royal or Bluffton, South Carolina. Never been to either, so I couldn't really remark on them. And then we have our top competitors for tourism. Ironically, Cumberland Island is one of our competitors. Although we are the gateway, we find from our merchants that Cumberland brings in a ton of people to our community, but we often aren't branding in a way that they stop and spend a lot of money in our merchant community. So that's one of the things that we hope we take from this branding study, to really set a clear identity so they want to know more about who we are. And then Fernandina Beach, we stand out against them because we're a lot less commercialized. You know, if you're reading anything about Fernandina Beach right now, parking's a big thing because of their growth. So St. Simons, Jekyll, they're known for their beaches and their historic district. St. Mary's offers similar natural beauty without the resort development. And then Darien, you know, we kind of share the same shrimping and coastal vibe with them and history. So our top competitors for attracting industry is obviously Kingsland, and all of this information is relative because when we're branding, we're trying to brand to compete with this sort of thing, to attract these type of people in our community. So Kingsland is our competitor because it's right next door and it's right next to the interstate. You know, they have that advantage, if you will. So Brunswick, we really just have to decide that St. Mary's has to distinguish itself by quality of life and the proximity to our naval base. So that's such a great advantage that we have right in our backyard. Jacksonville, Florida, it's very, 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 very metro. So, you know, that's a huge competitor for industry because of the price of goods, the price of labor there, and that sort of thing. And ironically, Palatka and Green Cove Springs. They're inland but near the water. We compete with them for blue-collar jobs. And then the next slide is going to be...
Go back real quick to the first
Yes.
slide in this category. We have a font issue. Go back two more. Is that residence? That's what I thought it was. Okay. That showing up as goggly goop on our...
Oh, sorry.
It was like Arabic or something.
Residents.
Residence, okay.
We're trying to be progressive here.
All right, thank you.
All right, so a lifestyle brand is a brand that promotes our distinct way of life. So it's something that you think of that if someone were to come and visit us, they would want to buy something with that brand on it to take back home or as a keepsake. So, that's going to be a large part of our branding piece because we get a lot of questions about where can I buy something that, says St. Mary's to take back home, or we actually get emails wanting things shipped and things like that. So we're pretty excited about this. I know I can speak for Angela and I when I say that. So and then our next slide is going to be all the pieces that come together to really form our brand. So, it's definitely not a one-session thing, a two-session thing. We've met some of these puzzle pieces and put them together. We've done a little research. We've met with our steering committee multiple times. We'll meet again in the next week. Public input, we've got that. One of the things we're really trying to focus on is our brand message and our like slogan, if you will. So hopefully we'll have some news on that in the next few weeks. And last but not least, our project timeline. Again, this is only phase one. So branding comes before the RSVP of Midtown. We have to find out who we are before we can find out how we're going to mold us and make us all fit together. So right now we are moving into our July timeframe here where we're going to meet next week for our brand position and tagline. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Great job. Okay. Do you want to entertain any questions, if anybody has any questions?
Sure. If I can answer them, I'll absolutely do that. Yes, Ms. Troy.
Are you going to ask the community to donate to the tagline concept, or do you already have one?
No, we don't have one. So that's what our survey
Will
was
you repeat
for.
the question, Candace? Because
Okay, so she asked if we were going to seek input from the public to form our tagline.
Yes.
And that
Come up with the tagline and then for people to.
Mm-hmm. So that happened in the first phases of our study, like the February, March to now. Nothing's set in stone. We can always change when they bring it forward. So, if you have a great tagline, please email me, mainstreet@stmarysga.gov, and I will tag it, pass it along to our helpers at Carl Vinson. Anybody else?
Candace, when talking about the areas that need improvement, that you had local government, did they give any specifics on local government? Like what are their issues with that?
I think a lot of it is perception. That what I gathered from the surveys and the public input is that progress takes time, projects take time, and that we may not be as transparent with the public on that timeline. So that was a lot of what I got. Yes, sir.
You might sit, go ahead.
I was just wondering, is that the City of St. Mary's? Would that be included in your part of your branding? And if not, would you maybe put out there a competition for people to submit branding ideas? For the Submarine Museum, we had 200 people apply or submit for the seal. I'm Kathy Dempsey, 110 Stowaway, St. Mary's, Georgia.
So our brand right now is for the city is our seal. Tourism has a different brand. I couldn't spit it off to you now. If Angela was in here, she could. But we want our seal for official business, and we want an actual brand for our city. So that's, I think, where people are getting a little bit confused. And of course, we would love the public to give some input. We've given that opportunity numerous times. I think we had the surveys out for right around 2.5, 3 months. So again, if you have some ideas, yes, please send them to me. And there may be some things that we don't get to in this study that we will circle back to in the future to have some competitions with the public.
Put it out on our Facebook page, and that many people came with their ideas.
That's
It was
amazing.
Fabulous. And we put the rules there with it, and also our prize money, and we'll be awarding that soon.
That's amazing. I can't wait to see who won.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck.
Yes, Mr. Connor?
Candace, what was the number of people polled in this thing that we're talking about?
Well over 1,000. I think it was close to 1,300.
Okay, so that is significant, yes.
Yes, we really did try to get out there and push it out, but,
Well, that gives you it gives you a true story for that amount of people. Yes.
I did come across an idea for, we're talking about the seal and like we have a visual identifier, and this is public feedback. They're just not here. But on the 4th of July, a group of a table, there was a discussion, and there was some people visiting from out of town, and just someone made comment that we actually have St. Mary's has their own city flag. Right, we have a flag that's flies at the pavilion with the state and United States flag, but we don't utilize that. We do have a city flag, and I Googled it. It's nowhere to be found. Like, you can't find the visual of that flag online. But there was actually a request, and 4 or 5 people spoke up that if we actually ordered extras and had them in tourism or whatnot, they would buy the flag, and that could go on T-shirts, that could go on branding. So that's something we could utilize that we don't use.
yes, I knew that.
Well, good, because that just came up at the 4th. And
Great minds think alike. Angela
yeah.
just thinks a little faster.
Well, I did call. I did call someone that day when it came up to see if it. I don't know if that came to her in the last week, but that's where it came from.
That's
It
amazing.
didn't.
Anything else? Anyone else? Man, I did that good of a job.
All right, thank you so much. We appreciate the work and look forward to final results. So we are adjourned until 6 o'clock for our quarterly town hall.